You're listening to the How to Talk to Girls podcast, where you'll learn step-by-step how to meet and seduce beautiful women. Whether you're looking for one night of fun, a week-long fling, or a long-term relationship. I'm your host, Trip, and the episode starts now. Hello and welcome to the How to Talk to Girls podcast. I'm your host, Trip Kramer from tripadvice.com. Welcome to another episode. Excited to be here and answer another question that I got in email. Last episode answered another question from a female listener, which was very interesting. And going back into some emails and answering some questions this week. I think it's been fun because you guys, you emailed me and you got really good questions. So here we are. So before we get into that, if you don't already know, I have a program called Hooked. Okay. And so there's a lot of people who have not heard of it and don't know that they can get more information on how to meet and attract women. Yes, you're listening to the podcast. Yes, you may be a viewer or a subscriber of the YouTube channel. But if you want to take things to the next level and really understand how to make this all work in your life, like how do you go from step A to step Z, then I'm going to be able to show you how in my program called Hooked. So listen to this. Hey, it's Trip Kramer. How would you like to be the man that women are naturally drawn to and command the animalistic magnetism that makes women desperately compete to become your lover? It's not enough to attract her. You've got to get her hooked. And that's why I'm inviting you to learn how to create an amazing abundance in your dating life that will make your friends grab you and demand to know what you're doing differently. You'll learn how to turn a female friend into a lover, how to set up a first date that naturally leads to sex. You'll even learn to get your ex-girlfriend or wife back if that's what you want. This program, Hooked, will get you everything you need to enjoy the sex life and dating life you know you deserve. Go to getherhooked.com to learn how to get a woman completely addicted to you. 100% money back guaranteed. Getherhooked.com. So don't forget to get your hands on that. Getherhooked.com. All right, sounds good. Okay, let's get into the question here. He says, hey Trip, big fan of your channel. I took a lot of your advice and recently approached a girl that prior to your videos, I wouldn't have been able to breathe around. Sounds intense. I went in confident, made strong eye contact, and the way she was standing, smiling, and gestures that she was making, she was just as interested. I shot myself in the foot, however, because I turned into Thumper from Bambi and literally went brain dead looking at her where I couldn't come up with clever flirts. She was asking me tons of questions to keep a conversation going, and I missed every cue she gave me. It was a tough break, and I wish I had a time machine sometimes. I'm 36, 6'6", with strong build and confident in almost all aspects of my life, but with the ladies, and it stems from my inability to drive. I have epilepsy, which has kept me from obtaining a license and makes setting up dates insanely difficult. I can be the biggest alpha in the room, but drop to beta as soon as I hit the passenger seat. I just don't know if this is a true problem and I should just give up, or I'm just letting this fester into an inflated insecurity that will always ruin my chances down the road. Oof, big question, lots to tackle here, and that's why I picked it. Yes, the answer is you should just give up because you're pretty much never going to be able to fix this problem. I'm just kidding. Joke. Of course, don't give up. I got answers for you. No one should give up. Everyone has a chance to be able to figure this thing out, okay? I worked with lots of guys in lots of different situations. And just for the guys out there who are not 6'6" with a strong build and confident in all areas of their life, right? There might be some guy listening being like, what? Dude, you're tall, you're strong, everything else in your life is awesome. What, you can't figure this out? This goes to show you that just because you might have some height, just because you're strong, just because maybe you're doing well in your business, in your life, everything else is great, doesn't mean that that's going to be good for you. So don't walk around seeing guys who you think are, physically attractive or appear confident. Don't think that those guys are necessarily getting girls. No offense to you, listener, okay? But this is a good point to make, that it doesn't matter about all those other superficial things. It's about how you act. It's about your inner qualities, which I talk about a lot in my program called Hooked, okay? That comes up quite a bit. So you need to check that out, whether you are strong, whether you're short, whether you're weird looking, normal looking, whatever it is, you got to check it out, okay? All right, so let me help answer this question for you. First, interesting, right? You said that there was this girl you were talking to and, you couldn't come up with the clever flirts and you were shaking and you were scared and this was your shot, okay? This is a big problem. I don't like it when guys think like, this is the moment. This is my shot. This is the shot I've been waiting for. Like, now is the time. No, okay, no. Especially for a guy like you who you haven't been practicing this. So you don't really deserve this shot right here. This is not a well-deserved shot. I'm trying to say this nicely, okay? It's not a well-deserved shot because you haven't been working up to this point. So of course you couldn't come up with clever flirts, as you say. Of course you couldn't keep a conversation going. She had to do all the work, right? Of course. You were not prepared for this moment. You will be more prepared when you actually go out and practice. I was working with a client this weekend. It was a private coaching client. I took him out here in Chicago. We went out to bars. We went out to malls. We did all sorts of approaching. And it's crazy how much better he got in 24 hours. Okay. Why? Because in the first 24, we worked together for 48 hours for 2 days. It's a whole weekend. But for the first 24 hours, what we did is we approached over and over and over and over and over. And so when I asked him on the second day that morning, I said, how do you feel now? Do you feel a little bit more confident today than yesterday? How about compared to when we first started? And he said, yeah, I feel a lot more confident. I go, do you know why? And he knew. He goes, yeah, it's because I've been practicing this. I've been approaching and I've been doing it and I've been taking the action. See, he hired me to help push him and do these approaches. This is where it's at. Now, you don't need me to do that. You could do this on your own. You could get the program hooked and do it on your own. You could just do it on you could leave right now and go and do it. You could literally pause this podcast wherever you are in your life and just go and start talking to women. You're going to screw up. It's going to be a disaster. Maybe not for the first few approaches. But if you don't put together an approach schedule, times to go out and practice this, these podcasts, my YouTube videos, they're going to mean jack squat. They're not going to mean anything to you because what is it? It's just information. The podcasts, they really come more in handy technically after you've done a lot of approaching. I mean, they're great now. They pump you up. They motivate you. They give you information. That's great. So they're great before, they're great after, but they serve an interesting purpose after. Because once you go out and you do a bunch of approaches, you're going to see where you're messing up and you're going to see where you're screwing up. And then you come back to the podcast and you're like, oh, I get what Tripp is saying now in this specific episode because it's going to relate back to a situation that I already have been in. You already have those experiences. So anyway, I'm getting a little off track, but that's how you use the podcasts and more information. You got to go out. But for you, the person who wrote in here, you turned into Thumper from Bambi and you went brain dead because you have no practice in this. Now, you have epilepsy. Let's talk about that for a second. That's interesting. Okay, so you have epilepsy. I don't know too much about epilepsy. I think that's when you fall asleep or you get tired. Yeah, so you can't get a license, I'm guessing, because it's hard for you to drive because you get tired easily and could fall asleep at the wheel. So it makes setting up dates insanely difficult. Why would that be? You don't need to drive them. Just take an Uber. How wonderful. We can just go on our phones and a car shows up and takes us anywhere we want, our personal driving service for not that much money. So that's solved, done. And if you can't afford an Uber, well, I would say that is a big problem there. And maybe your last thing you should be worrying about is dating if you can't even afford an Uber. Because they're like, well, if you take the cheapest service, they could be like a couple dollars. Okay, so that's solved. Moving on. And maybe epilepsy, that's something that's killing your confidence, but why should it? It's like, okay, so you fall asleep, so you have this thing. Again, I don't know too much about it, but if the only issue is you can't drive from it, and that's the biggest problem, and that's solved, it shouldn't be a big deal anymore. Okay? So You're saying I can be the biggest alpha in the room, drop to beta. I get it. But to me, man, this is easy, okay? This is easy because I see this from the outside and I see how easy it is to solve this issue. You just don't have the practice. But you know what? You are the last person who should give up because you said you feel confident in almost all areas of your life. So it's like you're there. It's like, boom, you got the missing piece of the puzzle. If everything else is going great, that should be enough motivation to say, let's complete it. Pretty cool that you're in that situation. Let's practice gratitude and say, well, hell, I'm 36. I'm in the prime of my life. 6'6", that doesn't hurt. Strong build, that doesn't hurt. Everything else is going great. Fantastic. Look at you. Boo-hoo, you have epilepsy. You'll deal with it. You have up to this point. Now it's time to go out there and get rejected. Go and get rejected. I was with my client, back to the story. I was with my client and he went out and he felt so much more confident the next day. And then he started approaching girls and getting numbers left and right. And for this guy, what's hilarious is he never even really tried this. He's like, I asked him, so what kind of revelations are you having right now? He goes, a lot. I'm like, tell me one. He says to me, I didn't realize that girls are actually not that mean. Boom. That's a big revelation. He had that revelation right there. Why? Because he went out and started talking to girls. That's what we did. Mass approaching. Approached maybe like, I don't even know, 15, 30, like over 50 girls in a weekend easily in 2 days. He's like, yeah, I guess I didn't realize they weren't that mean. And then he even noticed that, he didn't get that line all the time of the girl saying that they had a boyfriend. Yeah, he got rejected. But most of the rejections, so to speak, weren't even rejections, as he just left because he ran out of things to say. And I told him, I bet you if you stood in there and you stood your ground for a little bit longer and just hung on tight and tried to continue conversation, you might have ended up getting more numbers or being able to take the girl, wherever. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, what's crazy actually is the first night he did take a girl home. We went out to the club. He approached 15 girls, a bunch of girls, and most of them he left the conversation because he just ran out of things to say. And he's like, yeah, I just ran out. But every conversation was getting better and better and better and better. By the end of it, he's like, oh man, I got to go home. Like, I'm so tired. I'm like, no, bro. We're like, we've only been out for a few hours. Like, we can handle it. You're 28. Let's do this. He's all right. Did a couple more approaches. Boom. Ends up talking to a girl. Spends the next 30, 45 minutes with her, dancing with her, talking to her, getting her attracted. He actually studied my entire program, Hooked. So there you go. Look at that. It works. Huh? And he took her home that night. They slept together. So, I mean, it's possible for you, but it's not if you just kind of sit here and go, oh, I'm just going to hope for the best. You got to go out and make this work for you. And that's what you need to do. That's what you need to do. The person who wrote in, anonymous, didn't leave a name here. So you're getting past step one. You're saying here that you finally did the approach that you wouldn't have never done. Don't just expect to approach and everything falls into place. It will sometimes. If you approach enough girls and never, ever learn dating techniques, you'll end up just figuring it out. Honestly, it just kind of happens for you. With enough girls, you'll end up connecting with one. I mean, how many people have not listened to dating advice in the history of the world and have hooked up and been with girls? Plenty. Happens every single day. What are they doing? They're just kind of putting themselves in the right situation. Now, listen, of course, some of these guys are settling or going for women that they're not really interested in or just hoping for the best. But imagine if you actually were proactive in this situation. Like, whoa. Like, what if you actually went out and talked to more girls and made progress in this area? Can you imagine the type of quality of woman you could have? Boom. I mean, it'd be amazing. So I hope this episode has motivated you because that's what I want this to do. Okay? Motivate you to the point where you can take this stuff and go out and use it. Okay? If you want to learn how to flirt, I got that in my program, Hooked. There's a bunch of episodes in my podcast about that. Just scroll through. You'll find them. But really, at the end of the day, the most important thing is getting into conversation. Can you dig it? I bet you can. Hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll see you on the next one.